Hi, welcome back to my webcam. So I've narrowed it down to 2 books. This is my best and my worst book of 2020, and that's all we're doing. Right? That's fine. Don't even worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I did obviously stop doing bookmas. That was for technical difficulties. Don't worry about it. First, we've got A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness, which I already talked about at length, about like things I found to be upsetting and disrespectful and like badly conceived in my Christmas vlog. But this is genuinely like the worst book I read this year. I don't think like I feel really that strongly about it. It's not like the worst book I've ever read. This book is about a young woman named Diana who is abroad in Oxford and at Oxford, and she is doing research for her next award-winning paper or something, and she's studying alchemy, and she pulls a manuscript that's been gone for hundreds of years, and then this book supposedly holds the secrets of life, and if the wrong people get their hands on it, there will be trouble. I don't know what this trouble is. The book never tells me what this trouble will be. She falls in love for her vampire rescuer, Matthew Claremont, who is the one who tells her all these things about this manuscript, and his intentions are never questioned or called or interrogated in any meaningful way. Really genuinely incredible. I do think in the most objective way possible, the prose is just not good. It is told primarily from a first-person point of view from Diana's perspective, but then there are like 4 chapters in this 600-page book where it switches to a third-person point of view to figure out what Matthew and his clan of dumbasses are doing. Like, if your book can't survive without the context of what characters who aren't your narrator, you need to rework your plot or you need to rework your writing so that we aren't dependent on these details. I feel like Deborah, well, you know, when I hate books, I do call authors by their first names. Like, I do feel like she didn't have enough confidence in her writing to like let us meet characters as Diana met them, or let us discover plot points as Diana met them. And I really would have preferred that. I just think it would have given this book a lot more authenticity, a lot more cohesion. And I also have a suspicion that this was originally written in third-person point of view, because there are sections, just tiny little sections, of this book that genuinely feel like they were written in third-person point of view and that they didn't get changed. Diana is in the room, she is the narrator, but it's not always totally clear that's what is happening. Like, it sometimes feels like we're learning information that Diana is not learning, and it's like it switches point of views. And I think once Diana's actually referred to as she in narration, she's like referred to as she, and I was like, what are we? It makes it difficult to read. Matthew's fine. I mean, he's not that interesting in like my short list of vampires who I find to be extremely interesting. He's just not that interesting. He is like a domineering, controlling vampire. He's never villainized, even for 1 second, for committing murder. Like, there are other characters who are like, you don't understand who Matthew is, and even Matthew's like, you don't understand who I am and the things I've done, and Diana's just like, we're soulmates. Aside from that, Diana's really the only other character in this book. Like, she has these aunts, but they don't seem to have any like personality traits. Diana's completely devoid of personality. She's the most frustrating character because she is telling us that she's very stubborn and very willful, but this is actually never demonstrated to us. She tells us that she's stubborn, and then Matthew then tells us that she's stubborn, but she's not stubborn, actually. There's no examples. There's 0 examples. The examples that I think we are supposed to understand her being stubborn in are the way that she doesn't use magic, which is a choice that she makes, but it's actually not a choice that she makes. That is not true. And she does use magic. That's one of the first things we learn about her. She goes, I'm a witch and I don't use magic, but sometimes like I do use magic, but only for little things. So it's not a choice. So that's not a choice that she made and is sticking to her guns with. Good writing choice, man. I'm gonna start doing some work right now, because I am working. The other way that we could show that Diana is stubborn would be by her reaction to Matthew telling her that he has to be in charge because of vampire reasons. Like, that's something that's true about Matthew. He is like the head of the family, so he has to be in charge. He has to control like where Diana goes and what she does. But I feel like a stubborn person would object to this on principle. Like, I don't even feel like I'm that stubborn, but I don't think that I would be like, just if somebody was like, you have to listen to me because I'm in charge and I might kill you if you don't, and I'd be like, well, I guess relationship over, because that's just not gonna work. But Diana's like, let me think about this as an academic for a second, and then she's like, that makes sense to me and sounds good. It's insane that is the situation. By the way, as I look anywhere but the camera, any opportunity for the narrative to interrogate this is thrown away immediately by the belief that Diana and Matthew are soulmates. And like, I don't know if I'm missing context because I haven't read the other books, but there are a couple of opportunities where we're shown that Matthew might be like kind of a villain in his relationship with Diana, and then immediately it's like, well, you know, he was just doing that to protect me. He actually really does care about me, and the reason he was doing that, they're his reasons and they're not mine. And I'm just like, is that how we behave? No, it's not. And it's not how fiction behaves either. Like, if Diana's meant to be stubborn, when confronted with like the information that Matthew might be acting contrary to her best interests, then she should interrogate Matthew and not just be like, we shouldn't keep things from each other, Matthew. And when he goes, I'm sorry, like, for her reaction to just be like, sounds fair, he knows best. Like, that's not, it's 2011, so whatever, you know what I mean? So the third thing is the plot. This is a vampire romance novel. I have nothing against vampire romance novels. Sometimes I think about them, like they're being recommended online, and I'm like, that sounds like fun. It sounds like a vampire romance novel. I would love to read a vampire romance novel. I think vampires are so cool. And the problem is not that this is a vampire romance novel. It's that this is a vampire romance novel that is trying so hard to make us believe that it's not a vampire romance novel. In spite of the way that over 300 pages of this book are devoted just to like Diana and Matthew being nauseatingly intimate with each other without having sex, there's still so much pretension. Like, this is an academic fantasy novel for academics who know things about reading papers and are smarter than you. And then it's just like Matthew and Diana laid in bed together for 4 days straight because Diana was seriously wounded, and then they changed the locations to go lie in bed together elsewhere. And besides the thing about the genes being like genuinely disrespectful and like junk science, why do we think we can just pretend that the whole paranormal romance genre is like, we're too good for it? Like, we're not too good for it. None of us are too good for a paranormal romance novel. And that's just true. A lot of this book is so convoluted. As I said, Diana retrieves this manuscript from the library that nobody's seen for like hundreds of years. She's the first person in like a really long time to like actually be able to see this book and hold it in her hands, but she sent it back. And all of these creatures want her to try to get it back again. She has no idea how. She didn't know it was important. And I think this sets up like a really interesting conflict. That's what I thought this book was about. And I was just wrong. Because by page 200, we've sort of abandoned the plot line about the manuscript. I mean, it's still sprinkled in there every once in a while, but it is taken a backseat to the secondary plot line, which is Diana and Matthew's romance and how it is a forbidden love story. And I'm like, at this point, going, oh no, we've got too much going on in this book, and we're just pivoting to a romance novel. And that would be fine if I went into this knowing it was a romance novel and not like a fantasy novel with romance as like a primary aspect. Like, even though I've criticized the Throne of Glass series for being a romance novel that's targeted as fantasy, are marketed as fantasy, they're more fantasy books than this is. At page 450, we are confronted with the possibility of a third plot line, which will, I'm sure all of this will be explored in full in 3 books, but I don't think they all needed to be like introduced in book 1. In fact, I think book 1 should have been primarily about this manuscript, and that the manuscript's question, like what's in it, what are Matthew's intentions, should maybe Diana have sided with witches instead of with Matthew, who's kind of holding himself outside of the interests of vampires, but you don't really know what's going on with him. Like maybe she should have listened to her aunts instead of random vampires she met 2 days ago. So I feel like all of those questions should have been focused on in this book, and then at the end, when Diana and Matthew had more time to develop their relationship, it could have been revealed that vampires and witches aren't supposed to be together. Like it's dangerous and it's forbidden, and it's going to get Matthew and or Diana killed. And then book 2 could have almost picked up in the exact same place that book 1 leaves off, but there we're doing more romance, and we're learning about the specifics of what's in the book, and we're learning about why vampires and witches can't be together, and what exactly Diana and Matthew's long-term plan is. You would have been invested in the romance, and you would have been knowing what's going on in the world. And then halfway through book 2, you could, or even at the very end of book 2, you could have introduced the possibility of interbreeding. I don't know what I was saying, but interspecies, that's the third conflict that's introduced at the end of book 1, and I'm like, we didn't need to even think about it until book 3, ma'am. What on earth is left to do in 3 books? I think the act of introducing all those conflicts all in one book makes it feel like you're always doing exposition, because you are always doing exposition, because we're getting introduced to conflicts and plot lines and B plots and C plots and D plots and and characters the whole time, and we don't ever have a moment to recollect. Okay, really quickly, because I have a meeting to go to. My favorite book of the year was The Road by Cormac McCarthy. This is a science fiction novel that was written in 2006. I read this book in 10th grade in my 10th grade English class. My English teacher in 10th grade was obsessed with this book, and I didn't get it. I liked it in 10th grade, but I didn't get it. I get it now. It's about a man who is traveling south for the winter with his young son in a post-apocalyptic North American landscape. Nothing on Earth is growing anymore, so there is life on Earth, but not much. There is only human life on Earth, and the people who are left are anybody who's surviving, and there's nothing growing on Earth. There's just human beings wandering, trying barely to survive. It's really bleak. It's really disturbing. It's not something I would have picked up if I hadn't already read it, and I gave it 5 stars. And it's my favorite book, not only of this year, but of all time. This book is unbelievably powerful in the depiction of its bleakness and the depiction of this man who is doing everything he can to keep his son safe and alive. I think this book is about God. I think this mainly because my English teacher in 10th grade was this is a book about God. I did go to public school, but it is about suffering and it's about love. I don't think that I've read another book that is more about the kind of suffering that is intrinsic to human beings, but also the kind of love that we're capable of and the kind of lengths that we're able to go to, even when things basically are legitimately impossible and we feel abandoned by God. And I think there's this intrinsic kind of suffering to human nature, and I think this because I'm Catholic, but I think there's this intrinsic kind of suffering to human nature where we feel separate from God and we feel abandoned by God, and that's part of being human, and that's what this book is about. And not kind of, even when we feel like that, knowing that we've got to act right. There are human beings in this book who act or the worst of humanity, and there's not very much of humanity that's the best of it, because the man is not the best of humanity. He's just a man who is desperate to keep his son alive, but he is the very pinnacle of humanity, and that's why he's the man, and he's not given a name at any point. Really short sentences, very direct and to the point, and it's not very complicated or showy in the prose, but I love the process. And it's going to make you feel emotions, definitely, 100%. Some of them, it's my favorite book of all time. I don't think I'm going to read it again anytime soon because I don't think I can handle it. And I read it in like one sitting this year because it was due at the library. But that's it. That's all from me. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for watching any of my bookmas videos that I did end up posting. I hope you all are having a good day. I will see you very soon. Bye.